Kia ora tātou and welcome to Local Body 2013, Dunedin Television's guide to local body elections in the city. I'm Dave Gooselink and I'll be with you over the next week as we go through the process of voting in the Dunedin City Council elections. Let's begin by taking a look at the 3 wards in the Greater Dunedin area. The largest of the wards is the Central Ward, where most of you watching tonight will live. There are 35 candidates standing here for 11 seats on the Dunedin City Council. There are 2 seats on offer in the Mosgiel-Tari Ward and 3 candidates standing for your vote here. And finally, the smallest of Dunedin's 3 wards, Waikuiti Coast Chalmers, where sitting City Councillor Andrew Noon has been re-elected unopposed in the single seat there. Now let's take a look at the schedule for Dunedin Television's local body coverage over the next week. Tonight we'll meet and hear from the first group of candidates standing in the Central Ward. We continue with that ward on Tuesday, and with some retirements from the current City Council, there's a number of new faces putting their hands up. On Wednesday we round up the City Council candidates standing for your vote in the Central Ward. On Thursday, our attention turns to the 2 smaller wards. We'll meet the 3 candidates in the Mosgiel-Tari Ward and chat with the sole candidate in the Waikuiti Coast Chalmers Ward, Andrew Noon. And finally, next Friday, we'll meet the 9 candidates standing for the city's top job, the Dunedin Mayoralty, in an extended length special. But tonight we'll be hearing from 8 candidates first up standing in the Central Ward. Let's find a little bit more about our first group this evening. Irene Mosley helped lead the successful Southern Neurosurgery campaign. She's also worked in community development for the Clutha District Council, supporting communities in implementing projects and services. She's standing under the Greater Dunedin ticket. Kevin Neal is a 4th-generation Dunedinite and graduate of Otago University. He's now working at CRT here in the city and wants to see the council encourage economic growth and demonstrate financial responsibility. Teresa Stevenson is a current City Councillor and a qualified planner. She's Deputy Chair of the Council's Planning and Environment Committee and is keen to keep a council accountable and fiscally prudent. And finally, Julian Crawford. He's the founder of a cannabis museum in South Dunedin and is standing for the Aotearoa Legalised Cannabis Party. He believes cannabis tourism presents a huge potential for regional economic development in Dunedin. Now we'll begin this evening by giving each candidate 30 seconds to explain why they deserve your vote. That'll be followed up by a few questions from myself. If we can start on the left of our candidates, Irene Mosley, straight down the camera there. Tell us why you're standing for the City Council this election.
I believe I can bring to the council some of my personal qualities, which include honesty, integrity, an ability to communicate well and a sound knowledge of local body politics. I aim to base my judgment on sound reasoning, innovative thinking and practical common sense. I believe with these things I can add value around the council table this year.
Irene Mosley, thank you for your comments this evening. Now, first off, you've obviously led quite a high-profile campaign with the neurosurgery. Tell us, was that what got your interest in politics?
I think I've grown up in a family that had an interest in politics, and we've always, my mother joked that she had to go to Toastmistresses to keep up round the dinner table, so we were always encouraged to discuss issues and have our own opinions on things. I guess latterly, the last 10 years working in the Clutha District Council area, I feel like I've had my trainer wheels on and I've learned a lot of the processes and policies around council and how to get communities more connected and ensure that council allow the community to give what they want as opposed to what council wants. And now I'm ready to bring that to Dunedin and show that wider thinking that you sometimes don't have if you've lived here all your life.
So, okay, what strengths do you think you would bring, or differences you'd bring to the council table?
The community development's the one that I see as not being particularly strong at the moment. I think there's been too much where the public is saying, council aren't doing this, council aren't doing that. Well, actually, hey, that's the community's job. If you want it, work with the council and show that you need it.
Excellent. We'll come back to you later in the program. Irene, thank you for your time. Kevin Neal, now you're standing for the first time as well. Tell us why you're standing for the Dunedin City Council in this election.
Thanks, Dave. I'm standing for the Dunedin City Council effectively to reduce barriers to business and encourage debt repayment. There's many ways in which you can do this, but as Europe's finding out, it's very difficult. And I'm not going to have a golden bullet for that, but the three things I want to do is reduce the time and costs for building consents. I would also like to see a reduction in consultancy costs within the council to reduce costs overall. And finally, I want to see the council return to its core responsibilities. Now, that core responsibilities is a very grey area, but I can elaborate further if I had more time. Thank you.
Let's pick up on that. What are some of those areas that you think are missing or have been overlooked in the last council term?
Yeah, good question, Dave. The councils, not just in New Zealand, but particularly Dunedin, have made investments in areas well outside of their scope. Since 2002, the Local Body Council Act has implemented policies which have forced councils to spend money in areas that would have been typically done by the private sector.
So you think that councils should stick to their knitting, if you like? Are they doing their basic job well?
That can be argued, and I don't think we have time to answer that. But I mean, in some cases, yes.
And so, what do you think gives you the strength or the challenge? Why are you going for council? What's the challenge behind it?
Well, I've lived on a farm my whole life, but that's certainly no comparative advantage in New Zealand. I'm a practical person with common sense.
Excellent. Kevin Neal, we'll hear more from you as well later in the program. Thank you. Teresa Stevenson, you're a current City Councillor. Tell us why you want to you're standing again for the Dunedin City Council elections.
Well, because I'm already on the City Council, people know who I am, they know my values, and they know that I have a great deal of consistency. And when something needs to be brought forward, I'm prepared to bring it forward, even if it is a difficult thing to do. So I'm very frugal, I'm into keeping costs down, and I'm into avoiding luxuries and wasting money, and I'm not into the sale of assets. I think we should keep the city's assets, and I give a voice to the more marginalised in our community. And I'm into creating jobs too.
Good. Now, obviously, you've been involved with the council for many years. What's given you the impetus to continue standing? What keeps you going?
Well, I suppose Irene sort of hit on it to a degree. There's the environment is very important, and there's a strong voice for that, and development is very important, and there's quite often this talk about removing the red tape and that. But somebody has to be there to speak for the community. There are people that aren't so well off, both in their households and in businesses that are struggling, and it's to be there to help those folk. And I think that you really need to go out there to the businesses in the city and talk to them and say, look, world's changing, things are getting tough out there, but how can we help you take that next step forward? So it's more than red carpet, it's more than removing red tape, it's actually getting boots in there and helping them sort it out.
What would you say is your greatest achievement in the past term?
Okay, well, there's the electricity fund, it has been threatened at various times. People want to get rid of it. The home insulation program's been threatened at various times, and so I've fought to keep that. The Ravensbourne Cycleway I initiated, so like seeing that continually being rolled out, transportation strategy, hearings, a spatial plan.
Excellent. We'll hear more about those later in the show as well. Thank you, Teresa. And finally to Julian Crawford. Now you are standing for a second time, I believe. Tell us why you're standing for the Dunedin City Council this election.
No, this is the first time I'm actually standing for council, but I've been involved in the legalised cannabis issue for some time. And I'm also a small business owner based in South Dunedin, and I'd like to see more graduates from the university staying in the city and being encouraged to start up their own small businesses. And I think that the cannabis industry and the hemp industry is one opportunity for economic development that could help balance the books and reduce the debt that the Dunedin City Council has at the moment.
Excellent. So tell us, a younger voice around the council table. Do you think younger voices are needed in the council?
Yeah, I think having a younger voice around council would be really beneficial because obviously there's a lot of young people in Dunedin with the university, and like I say, we want to encourage these graduates to stay in Dunedin. And I think I can bring some fresh ideas, particularly with the cannabis issue. I want to see an area of Dunedin set aside for cannabis cafes that encourages more tourists to come to the area, particularly the young backpackers who are seeing legalisation happen overseas.
Do you think this is an issue that the council, at the moment, or the potential candidates for council would be interested in embracing?
Well, obviously Dunedin has to look at all its options in terms of balancing its books, paying off the debt, and this is one way that is proven to bring in a lot of revenue. Of course, Dunedin City Council would have to work with central government on this issue, but we could lobby them strongly, and it could be a good opportunity.
Excellent. I'm sure we'll hear more about that idea later in the show as well. Thank you, Julian. You've heard from our first briefings from our candidates this evening. After the break, we'll be giving them questions, and first up, we'll be tackling economic development and debt. Back in a moment. Welcome back. We'll be with our first set of candidates this evening for the Dunedin Central Ward. We'll begin our questioning. First question to all candidates this evening. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Dunedin City over the next 3 years? Irene Mosley, I'll start with you.
Well, of course, I think the one on everybody's mind is the level of debt repayment needed. But I think you also have to be very careful that we don't get into the mentality of, no, we can't afford things. We need to look at things very carefully and strategically and say, hey, if this is as important as we think, how can we get what we need with the resources we have by being more clever in the way that we work with communities?
Thank you. Kevin Neal, is there a big challenge you see as a major one facing the council?
Well, yes, of course, effectively wastage within the council. It's not just separated to the council alone, Dave, it's happening in national government indeed. The level of expenditure on bureaucratic measures well beyond what we can budget and afford is something that I'll be trying to focus on.
Excellent. Teresa, obviously, being in the council, many challenges, but what do you see as the biggest one for the next 3 years?
Definitely jobs, more local jobs. I mean, the City Council, we've had Paul Orders as our Chief Executive. He's actually quite good, and he's been able to help us get the debt down and to deal with a lot of the other issues, and that's been really, really good, and the accountability's improved a bit. And but the jobs issue, that is the ultimate challenge. We need to be very creative about how we fix that one.
Cool, we'll come to those in a bit more detail in a moment. But Julian, just summing up, what do you see as the biggest challenge for the Dunedin Council in the next 3 years?
Yeah, I agree with the previous speakers that jobs and getting the debt down is a key issue for Dunedin. And one example of that is out at Invermay, where we've seen there's going to be a lot of job losses with the scientific research staff there. And I think there's an opportunity to get them to work in the medical marijuana field to actually bring some investment back into this region from outside the area.
I sense a theme from your answers this evening, Julian. We'll carry on with that, though, economic growth and regional development. It certainly helped Dunedin make national headlines this year, perhaps for the wrong reasons. But what role do you see the council is playing in improving those areas? Let's start with a sitting city council. Let's start with Teresa Stevenson. What role do you see the council as playing in improving this area?
Okay, you can just make things easier for businesses, remove the red tape, roll out the red carpet, and that is part of the solution. But in Otorohanga, which is a small town in the North Island, Dale Williams, who's the mayor, is tackling it quite a different way. He goes and talks to businesses, anyone that is willing and happy to talk to him, and he says, how can we help your business adapt? Change? How can we build in technology? How can we introduce you to foreign internationals, maybe using our international students, aunties and uncles? You find buy local, procurement. Okay, you have to be really creative. You have to work with the individual businesses and nurture them. Okay, it's different from just paperwork. It's not just paperwork. Paperwork's boring.
Julian, what role do you see as council playing in terms of the economic growth and regional development areas?
Obviously encouraging graduates to stay in Dunedin, like I've said, and starting businesses. And of course, I am standing for the Aotearoa Legalised Cannabis Party, but that also includes the hemp issue. industrial hemp has huge potential for being turned into biofuels, and we know that the drilling for oil issue is a big one also down here. If we can look at sustainable biofuel options, that's another way we could develop the economy regionally.
Right. Irene Mosley, you mentioned jobs in your opening. Jobs, what role should council be playing in that and economic growth?
I think council's role is a support role. I mean, it's not council's job to run the city. We need to make that clear. And the other thing I think we need to be careful about is negativity. I think the Stand Up Otago campaign has shown a lot of good things that are happening that we can build on. And again, that's that assets-based development where the people actually know best what they need. We need to be listening and working with them to help make it easier for them to do it themselves rather than ending up with a nanny state within Dunedin City.
Kevin, finally for this question, economic growth, the council, what role should they be playing?
Very good question, and I think often the role of the council is overstated, Dave, as to what they can achieve. The business is largely implemented by the national government, and if people have difficulty with some of the limitations to what's happened in Dunedin recently, then they'll get their chance to vote in the next election at national body level. Councils really need to reduce as many barriers to business as possible, so when people want to spend and invest in your city, they're enabled to.
Well, another big area that we touched on in the opening there is the council's large long-term debt. As been mentioned by many candidates throughout this election campaign. Given the spending restrictions, and I'll start with in the middle there with Kevin, Neil this time, given the spending restrictions, what projects would you like the council to pursue over the coming term?
Well, that's a good question, and to be frank, there are a number of things on the horizon in terms of projects that the council wants to spend money on. The most important stuff really is the infrastructure. It's not pretty. It's basic stuff like drainage, sewage and rubbish. These things are not vote winners, unfortunately. Grandiose projects like stadiums and various other things are. So yeah, for me it's very much getting back to basics and making sure that that is done properly.
Teresa, obviously you know how tight the financial situation is. What would you like to see pursued as priorities?
Okay then. What I'm not so keen to see is any more luxury projects like building new swimming pools. If people want new swimming pools, they're going to have to pay cash up front. I'm not into using debt for that sort of thing. The other thing is that we can be quite creative. If we are going to invest money, we've got to get a lot of bang for our buck. So like trying to encourage people to insulate your homes, build additions, improve your houses, make Dunedin a fantastic place to live. That creates jobs. And when you go and put about 20 grand into your home, you're actually investing in your community. So all you need to do is facilitate the loans. Now that doesn't really cost the council anything, it's just being creative.
Okay. And Julian, obviously tight budget, what projects we'd like the council to be investing in given the tight financial situation?
Yeah, well obviously they have to sort of get the council-controlled organisations under control and make sure that spending's not over the top. But cycleways are a big thing. I think they should be removed from the street and made safer. And I also support the cable car going up High Street. You know, transport issues could improve this city quite a bit.
Excellent. Finally, Irene, the council debt, obviously we know how big it is. Is there room for more spending on other projects?
I think we've got to be pretty effective in the way we use our money for the next 3 years. If I'm successful getting in, that's the angle I'll be taking. It's become very clear that maybe council aren't the best people to be managing projects and things. Maybe they're better managed within the community, supported by council. We've got Delta and Dunedin Management Centre. If they can be more effective, that will help bring money into the town as well. Let's stick to what they do and make it better and let the community get on with what they do best, which is business and economic development.
Thank you. Some interesting comments there to ponder. We're back with another set of questions with our candidates after the break, and we'll be looking at the issues of Cycleway and the Central Business District. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Dunedin Television's coverage of Local Body 2013. Continuing with questions from our first set of candidates this evening. Julian Crawford, I'll come to you first this time. What do you think about Dunedin's Central Business District? Is it thriving at the moment? And if it's not, what's holding it back?
Yeah, it's doing reasonably well, but I'd like to see more retail space made available for new businesses and it can often be hard for start-up businesses to find retail space, so somehow we have to make it more affordable. And there's particularly in South Dunedin, there's a lot of areas that need developing in terms of the main street there that could be tidied up a lot.
Irene Mosley, the neurosurgery campaign, we saw big parades down the main street, but what's the Central Business District looking like? Is it vibrant?
The Central Business District in Dunedin is actually reasonably unique in that we've managed to retain shopping in the centre of town. This is something that is being lost in some other centres around New Zealand. I think we need to work at keeping that. We're a small enough city that adds that unique feature. And when we have the likes of the cruise ships and things coming in, it means everything's centrally located and people can walk to everywhere they want to go. As far as the rates of rent and things, that's private enterprise. It's not something that council can really get involved in. I mean, I know we set the rates, but it's about more than that.
Kevin, you're in CRT, you've got the shirt to prove it here. Tell us, what do you think the situation is with the Central Business District at the moment?
Well, I would like to see the Octagon pedestrianised in time, Dave. Not completely, I think, because I think buses are important to be able to get access to it. But what we have at the moment with regards to the cruise ships, I think, is slightly dysfunctional. I'd like to see them coming in as much as possible by train into the railway station, our most glorious building arguably, and then flood them up into the Octagon thereafter or spread out in various directions.
Teresa, you have a planning hat on at times. Tell us, the Central Business District, is it thriving? Is there need to do more?
If you have a look at retail, and not only in Dunedin but right throughout the country and throughout the world, there's a decline. Have you noticed how many empty shops there are just recently? And it works out worse in areas like Princes Street and the Gardens. They're having a big bout of shops closing, but we're going to start to see that happening in George Street. It means you have to get very, very smart. You have space. How are you going to reuse this space? Because it may not be in retail anymore, because internet trading is pulling people away. You go onto the internet, you promote Dunedin as a really great place to run your business from. Maybe you should use some of these main street shops. Maybe if you're an internet trader, you actually do your warehousing on the main street and do a bit of trade off the main street as well as do your internet trading. We can't beat them at the game, we've got to play the game.
Excellent. Now we now come to a couple of quick-fire questions for just two of our candidates. So the first set of candidates, Irene and Teresa, I'll come to you with this question. This year's residents' survey showed a high level of satisfaction with some council facilities and services, but overall satisfaction with the performance of the Dunedin City Council was still 54%. What areas do you think are letting this side down, and where can the council itself help improve those areas?
This is a really difficult question because everybody has different things that they think are important. I've been to three of the mayoral forums and everybody is almost pushing their own barrow. I think we need to encourage people to start being a little less selfish and see what's for the greater good as opposed to your own personal good. I do think there's a need for another swimming pool south of the city. There's a huge catchment there. It would help Mosgiel revitalise because people would come in. I know this because I've been involved with both the Clutha Recreation Centre build and the swimming pool upgrade, and I know what that's doing for Balclutha. So again, we need to think differently. We can't always have what we want. It's the way the world is. There's a world recession, and if we've only got 7 or 8% unemployment, we're doing jolly well compared with Europe sitting at 25%. So I'm a bit hard line. Stop our moaning. Let's get on and make the most of what we've got and all think together.
Teresa Stevenson, some improvement this year, but still 54%. What areas are we letting down?
Okay, we've got to be more proactive in our communication. I mean, it's all very well to put on a website that there's some consultation, just let people come forward. You actually need to go out and find the people that have helicopter views to see what the problems are. You actually need to go and talk to them and actively pull that information in. Tell them that there's a submission process going on. Our website is rubbish. It could be stacks better. You look on that What's On in Dunedin website and you know there's about 6 art exhibitions and that's about it. If there is an event, it's right down the bottom of the list. Just be proactive, list things.
Excellent. A second quickfire question to the gentlemen this evening, to Kevin and Julian. Now, every election, candidates do talk about wanting greater consultation and engagement with the community. How do you feel about that, given that previous efforts like holding public forums, for example, tends to attract just a handful of people? Kevin, how can we get better engagement or consultation?
Well, actually, it's a very good question, and the short answer is that I don't have a solution to that. Democracy more generally in the Western world is struggling heavily. Some countries having less than 50% turnout to vote, which means that effectively a minority is ruling the majority. At the internet, I accept websites need attention, and mail drops are ineffective as well in some cases. So yeah, the answer to that is I don't have an effective one. I'm sorry.
Julian, what do you think they could do, council could do better to engage with the community, the feeling that they're not being engaged with?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very important that the community has their say, and I think we have to find new ways of connecting with people, and probably through the internet is a big one. If we can get more people engaging in feedback surveys and putting their opinions to council through the internet, that might bring in some younger voices, and have some more public forums around the city, particularly with the students, and that could be a good way of engaging.
We're almost out of time with our first set of candidates, but our final question for our first group of 4 candidates in the Central Ward this evening around that cycleway issue. There's been a big increase in spending on cycleways around the city over the past few years, with more to come, potentially at the cost of some inner city parking. Irene, I'll start at your end. How do you feel about that?
I think the first thing that people need to understand is that State Highway 1 is not controlled by council. That's part of the transit network, which is under New Zealand Land Transport Authority. So what the council can do there is reasonably limited because they're dictated by the rules of transit. I think it is ridiculous to have cycle lanes beside heavy trucks. I've owned a farm, had heavy trucks, know how hard it is for the drivers to see a car beside them, let alone a cyclist. That does need to be fixed, but I don't think it's something the council can fix on their own, and the proposals that came out last week needs to be stressed are from transit, not council.
Excellent. Kevin, cycleways, what's your thoughts?
It's a tricky one, Dave, and it's something that's crippling all of New Zealand at the moment. Certainly the Portobello to Port Chalmers route is high on my profile because that will encourage tourism, but also a much healthier style of living for all of those people that live in that area, and indeed people that want to travel in that direction.
Excellent. Teresa, cycleways a big increase. What do you see as that?
Okay, well, we've got the one-way system, so that's where if you're really big and brave, you cycle like crazy down the one-way system. We're looking at changing that and putting a separated way for people to get down there. But the real magic is our beautiful spaces. You go down beside the Leith, you go down towards the stadium, you go around the harbour, like you said, gorgeous. Let's promote, link up those beautiful spaces. We'd be the Cambridge of the world. It's going to be beautiful.
Excellent. Julian, final word for the night, cycleways?
Yeah, I think we have to get more of our cycleways off the street, even if that means putting them on the footpath in some cases. And we've got a great example going out to Port Chalmers of an off-street cycleway that will hopefully be completed soon. And I'd like to see the Caversham Tunnel opened up for bikes as well.
Excellent. Thank you to our first set of 4 candidates this evening, Irene Mosley, Kevin Neal, Teresa Stevenson and Julian Crawford. Thanks for coming in this evening. Stay with us after the break. We've got another set of 4 candidates standing in the Central Ward. Back soon.